Let me tell you something real. There are people walking this earth who will smile with you, shake your hand, sit beside you, and maybe even share a prayer with you, while deep inside, they have already surrendered themselves to darkness. I am not talking about something from a movie or a made-up story. I am talking about a kind of harmful behavior that can hide behind charm, kindness, intelligence, and even the appearance of righteousness. And I want you to listen very carefully because this is not about creating fear or making everything sound dramatic. This is about learning to see things clearly. There can come a moment when something changes deep inside a person. Most people think self-love is simply being too focused on yourself. They think it means someone who cares too much about their appearance, always checks their reflection, always talks about themselves, or constantly wants attention. But that is only what you can see on the surface. There is another form of extreme self-focus that goes much deeper. It can be cold, disturbing, and completely lacking in genuine care for other people. You may not recognize it at first. In fact, you may not recognize it until you are already deeply involved. By the time you understand what is really happening, you may already feel trapped inside something that looks like love but feeds on your pain. It often begins very quickly. It can be a look, a comment, a small moment when they make you feel like you are important to them. It feels incredibly good. It can feel almost impossible to resist because they seem to understand you in a way that other people never have. They become experts at mirroring you. They watch you closely. They pay attention to how you speak, how you react, what makes you happy, and what makes you afraid. They listen when you talk about difficult experiences from your past. They remember the things that hurt you when you were younger. They listen to your deepest fears and your private struggles. They nod as though they completely understand. They may even tell you that they have experienced the same kind of pain. For a moment, you may believe that you have finally found someone who truly understands you, someone who can see beyond the surface, someone who knows the parts of you that other people never noticed. But with a deeply self-absorbed and manipulative person, those private details may not be treated as something sacred. They may become information that can later be used against you. Your kindness is not always respected. Your compassion is not always appreciated. Sometimes those qualities become the very things they learn to use against you. They learn how to cry at exactly the right moment. They know how to suddenly become the wounded person when you are trying to discuss something they did wrong. They know how to turn an argument into a story about how difficult their life has been. They know how to make you feel guilty for expecting basic respect. And because you have a good heart, you begin to soften. You start thinking that maybe you were too harsh. Maybe you should have listened longer. Maybe you should have shown more understanding. Maybe they really are struggling. Maybe you are expecting too much. Then you step back. And the moment you step back, they have gained control again. Your compassion has been turned against you. Your ability to forgive has become something they depend on. Your patience becomes permission for them to continue. Eventually, you begin to notice a pattern. The apologies do not lead to changed behavior. The promises do not stop the same hurtful actions from happening again. They say they understand, but the same problem keeps returning. Every time you finally decide that you have had enough, they pull you back in. They may show just enough sadness to make you feel guilty. They may suddenly become loving again. They may remind you of the good memories. They may promise that everything will be different this time. And you hope. That is the trap. They do not necessarily need to keep you happy. They only need to keep you emotionally dependent. They give you a little affection, then they take it away. They give you praise when they want you close. Then they become cold when they want to punish you. They give you just enough attention to make you question your own judgment. And when you are at your weakest, when your emotions are already exhausted and your heart is completely open, they may attack through silence, withdrawal, criticism, rejection, or carefully chosen words. There may be no physical violence at all. Yet you can still feel deeply wounded. It is one thing for someone to lack empathy. It is another thing to recognize the feelings of another person and then deliberately use those feelings to gain control. That difference matters. A selfish person may hurt you because they are thinking only about themselves. But a manipulative person may study your weaknesses and intentionally use them. They may know exactly what to say and when to say it. They may recognize the moment when you are most vulnerable and then choose that moment to strike emotionally. You come to them with tears in your eyes, hoping for comfort, and they may respond with coldness. You tell them about a deeply personal experience, trusting them with something you rarely tell anyone, and later they bring that same experience into an argument. You tell them your greatest fear, believing you are safe, and one day they use that fear to frighten you. That is not healthy intimacy. It is a serious breakdown of respect. When someone repeatedly stops seeing other people as human beings with feelings and begins treating them as objects, tools, or sources of power, something has gone deeply wrong. They can hurt your heart and then accuse you of creating the problem. They can make you cry and then call you too sensitive. They can push you to the edge and then criticize you for becoming emotional. They can create the situation and then blame you for how you reacted to it. And one of the most confusing parts is how different they may appear in public. They do not walk around showing everyone their worst behavior. They may be charming. They may be polite. They may be generous. They may appear calm and mature. They may be respected by friends, relatives, coworkers, or people in the community. People may describe them as kind. They may say that this person would never hurt anyone. They may say that the person is misunderstood. And that can make your private pain feel even more lonely. Because when you finally try to tell the truth, people may look at you with disbelief. They have seen the public version of that person. They have seen the smile, the kindness, the helpful behavior, and the carefully controlled image. They have not seen what happens when the doors close. That is why manipulation can be so difficult to explain. The person who is hurting you may have already created a completely different story for everyone else. They may have already told people that they are worried about you. They may have already suggested that you are becoming difficult. They may quietly plant doubts about your behavior before you ever have a chance to explain what is really happening. Then, when you finally speak, people may already have a version of the story in their minds. You become the angry one. You become the emotional one. You become the person with the problem. Meanwhile, they remain calm. That calm appearance can be incredibly confusing. When extreme self-focus becomes mixed with manipulation and a complete lack of accountability, a person's love, hope, and kindness can become tools that are used to control them. Your love becomes their source of attention. Your hope becomes the reason you stay. Your kindness becomes the shield that protects them from consequences. And they may manipulate those qualities so effectively that you begin questioning your own stability. You start wondering whether you really did something wrong. Maybe I made them angry. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I was unfair. Maybe I should have handled it differently. Maybe I expected too much. But after enough manipulation, those thoughts may no longer feel like your own natural judgment. They may have been shaped by repeated criticism, denial, blame, and confusion. This is why emotional manipulation can be so destructive. It does not always break you all at once. Sometimes it happens slowly. You become less confident. You become more careful with your words. You begin watching their mood before you speak. You start thinking about every possible reaction before bringing up a problem. You apologize even when you are not sure what you did wrong. You explain yourself again and again because you are desperate to be understood. And the more you explain, the more opportunities they have to twist your words. What is truly frightening is when there seems to be no genuine remorse. Instead of being concerned about the pain they caused, they may appear more interested in maintaining control. Sometimes you may even notice a strange calmness when you are falling apart. You may notice that they seem almost satisfied when you become emotional. If you ever notice that kind of reaction, pay attention. There should be no pleasure in watching someone you supposedly love suffer. A healthy person may become uncomfortable when they see your tears. They may want to understand what happened. They may want to repair the damage. A cruel person may use your tears as proof that they still have power over you. They may feel important because they can change your emotional state. They may feel powerful because they can make you happy one moment and devastated the next. That is when the mask begins to slip. The charm fades. The performance becomes harder to maintain. And you begin to see what is happening behind the image. They may not attack strong boundaries directly at first. Instead, they often test kind people. They test patient people. They test forgiving people. They want to know how much you will tolerate. They want to know how many times you will forgive. They want to know how much disrespect they can give before you finally leave. And if you continue giving more, they may continue taking more. You begin walking on eggshells. You feel like one wrong word could start another argument. One small disagreement can lead to days of silence. One question can become a huge conflict. One boundary can suddenly make you the enemy. And instead of walking away, you may try harder. You give more. You explain more. You apologize more. You try to become perfect. You believe that if you can just say the right thing, behave the right way, remain calm enough, patient enough, loving enough, then everything will finally become peaceful. But the finish line keeps moving. Because the problem was never that you were not good enough. The problem was never that you did not give enough. The problem was the unhealthy need for control. A person who is committed to control can always find another reason why you have failed. There is always another rule, another complaint, another accusation, another demand, another reason you need to prove yourself. And slowly, you become exhausted. The person you once were begins to disappear. Your confidence becomes weaker. Your natural joy becomes harder to find. Your voice becomes quieter. Your kindness starts to feel like a weakness. You stop trusting your instincts. You stop believing that you deserve peace. And that is how emotional destruction can happen. It does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes through a fake smile. Sometimes it comes through silence. Sometimes it comes through constant criticism. Sometimes it comes through carefully planned confusion. Sometimes it comes through lies that are repeated so many times that you begin wondering whether they might actually be true. There is a special kind of darkness in a person who does not simply tell occasional lies, but builds an entire version of reality around those lies. I am not talking about a harmless excuse or a small lie people sometimes tell to avoid hurting someone's feelings. I am talking about deliberate dishonesty that is used to control another person's understanding of what is happening. For a manipulative person, the truth can become an enemy. They do not simply hide an uncomfortable fact. They change the story. They change the order of events. They change what was said. They change who started the argument. They change who caused the damage. They change the meaning of what happened until you begin questioning your own memory. They may tell you that something never happened even though you remember it clearly. You may remember an entire conversation, yet they insist you imagined it. You may remember exactly what they promised, yet they claim they never said it. At first, the contradictions may be small. You notice something that does not make sense. You hear a different version of a story. You notice that their explanation keeps changing, but you brush it aside. Maybe you misunderstood. Maybe you forgot. Maybe you were tired. Maybe you heard them incorrectly. That is how the confusion begins. The problem is not only the lie, the problem is the repeated attempt to replace your understanding with theirs. Over time, the mental fog becomes stronger. You start keeping records, you check old messages, you replay conversations in your head, you begin wondering whether you can trust your own memory. Not because you are naturally paranoid, but because the constant contradictions have made you feel that you need evidence to defend your own experience. That is how control can work. It does not always require physical force. Sometimes it works by destroying your confidence in your own judgment. If someone can convince you that your memory is unreliable, then you may eventually depend on them to tell you what really happened. And once you stop trusting yourself, they have gained enormous influence over your reality. They can use anger when anger works. They can use tears when tears work. They can use charm when charm works. They can use silence when silence works. They can change their personality depending on who is watching. Around friends and family, they may appear loving and gentle. Behind closed doors, they may become cold and calculating. And if you ever try to expose the difference between those two versions, they may already have prepared the people around them. They may have already told others that you are difficult. They may have already said that you are struggling emotionally. They may have already presented themselves as the concerned person who is trying to help you. Then, when you finally tell your side, people may believe them first. That can create another layer of pain. You are not only trying to recover from what happened, you are also trying to recover from the fact that other people may not believe you. They may hear your story and say that the person you are describing does not sound like the person they know. That response can make you feel completely alone. But a public image is not proof of private character. A person can appear generous in public and still behave terribly in private. A person can say all the right things and still create tremendous harm behind closed doors. A person can build a beautiful reputation while destroying someone's peace in secret. That is why actions matter more than appearances. A carefully maintained image cannot erase repeated harmful behavior. And when someone is committed to deception, they may lie not only to protect themselves, but also to make themselves look superior. They may present themselves as the hero. They may present themselves as the victim. They may present themselves as the person who sacrificed everything. They may tell people that you were toxic, unstable, abusive, or impossible to deal with, while leaving out the behavior that pushed you to your breaking point. The story becomes completely reversed. And when you try to correct it, the conversation moves away from what actually happened. You ask a simple question, "Why did you lie to me?" Suddenly, you are defending your tone. You are explaining your facial expression. You are defending your character. You are being accused of being angry. The original question disappears under a mountain of distractions. This is why these conversations can feel endless. You begin the discussion trying to understand one specific event. You finish the discussion defending your entire personality, and the original issue remains untouched. That is not a productive disagreement. That is confusion used as a shield. The more time you spend chasing clarity, the less time you spend thinking about whether you should leave the situation. The more you try to prove the truth, the more exhausted you become. And exhaustion can make it harder to protect yourself. That is why clear boundaries matter. You do not have to win every argument. You do not have to convince everyone. You do not have to make a dishonest person admit what they did. Sometimes protecting your peace means refusing to participate in endless arguments about reality. Because if someone has decided that truth is whatever benefits them, no amount of explaining may be enough. And after you finally leave, the behavior may not always stop. Some people continue trying to control the story even after the relationship has ended. They may talk about you to mutual friends. They may check your social media. They may ask other people how you are doing. They may spread rumors. They may find indirect ways to remind you that they are still watching. The goal may be to get a reaction. Because your peace is a threat to their control, your healing shows that they no longer have the same influence. Your happiness shows that your life continues without them. And that can be difficult for someone who has built their sense of power around controlling another person. This is why you should never measure your healing by whether they understand your pain. You should measure it by whether you are becoming yourself again. You are not responsible for making them feel guilty. You are responsible for protecting your mind. You are responsible for protecting your peace. You are responsible for rebuilding the parts of yourself that were damaged. There is another disturbing pattern that can appear when someone repeatedly enjoys causing emotional pain. They may intentionally provoke you. You can be having a normal day, feeling calm, and then suddenly they say something that hits one of your deepest weaknesses. It may sound like an ordinary comment to everyone else, but you know exactly what it means. They know exactly what it means too. They may remember the insecurity you shared months earlier. They may remember the mistake you told them about. They may remember the thing you are most ashamed of. And when they want to hurt you, they bring it back. Then when you react, they act surprised. They say they were only being honest. They say you are too sensitive. They say you cannot take a joke. They say you are making a big deal out of nothing. But you know how it felt. You saw the look in their eyes. You noticed the calmness after the comment. You noticed that they did not seem concerned about the damage. That absence of concern can tell you a great deal. A healthy person may make a mistake and regret it. A healthy person may say something hurtful and then try to repair the damage. A person who repeatedly causes pain without remorse may be showing you a very different pattern. They may bring up your failures again and again, not because they want to help you grow, not because they want to support you, but because they want you to feel smaller. They want you to remember every mistake. They want you to believe that you will never be good enough. And when you finally stand up for yourself, they may become even more aggressive. Because now you are no longer responding the way they expected. Your resistance threatens the control they had. Your boundaries threaten the relationship pattern they built. Your refusal to accept disrespect becomes a challenge to their sense of power. This is why protecting yourself can sometimes make the situation temporarily louder. When you stop participating in the old pattern, the other person may increase their efforts to bring you back into it. They may suddenly become extremely kind. They may suddenly become extremely angry. They may suddenly become extremely emotional. They may remind you of the good times. They may make promises. They may accuse you of abandoning them. They may tell you that nobody will ever love you the way they do. But remember what the pattern has shown you. Words are easy. Patterns are harder to fake. Look at what repeatedly happens after the apology. Look at what repeatedly happens after the promise. Look at whether the behavior actually changes. And if you finally leave, do not assume that the end of the relationship means the end of the manipulation. Some people will continue trying to disturb your peace from a distance. They may watch your social media. They may ask mutual friends about you. They may try to make you jealous. They may post things designed to get your attention. They may spread stories that they know will eventually reach you. They may try to make you angry because anger is still a form of connection. If you are still reacting, they may believe they still have access to you. That is why healing requires more than physical distance. You must also create emotional distance. You have to stop checking, stop explaining, stop trying to prove yourself to everyone, stop trying to understand every contradictory thing they said, stop looking for the apology that may never come. Your peace is more valuable than the final answer to every question. People who are deeply committed to control may also surround themselves with people who support their behavior. These supporters may admire them. They may defend them. They may praise them. They may refuse to believe anything negative about them. And when you finally speak about what happened, those people may become another source of pain. They may tell you that you are being dramatic. They may tell you that the person would never do such a thing. They may tell you to forgive and move on. They may say that you are the one creating conflict. But you do not need everyone to believe your story before you are allowed to protect yourself. You do not need a public trial before you can walk away from something that is damaging you. You do not need permission to create boundaries. And you do not need to remain in a harmful situation just because someone else has a good opinion of the person hurting you. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is quietly step away, not because you are weak, because you finally understand what is happening. A manipulative person may want you isolated because isolation makes control easier. They want you to doubt yourself. They want you to believe nobody will understand. They want you to believe that leaving means losing everything. But the moment you begin reconnecting with your own judgment, the control starts to weaken. You begin remembering who you were before the constant confusion. You begin remembering what peace felt like. You begin noticing how much energy you used to spend trying to keep another person happy. You begin realizing that you were not asking for too much. You were asking the wrong person. And when you finally start rebuilding your life, they may try to return. Not necessarily because they have changed. Sometimes they return because they notice that you are no longer controlled by them. They see you becoming peaceful again. They see you becoming confident again. They see you smiling again. They see you living without constantly thinking about them. And that can be enough to bring them back into your life. They may not come with an apology. They may come with a casual message. They may act as if nothing happened. They may remind you of an old memory. They may suddenly become sentimental. They may say they miss you, but remember that missing access to you is not the same as learning how to love you properly. A person can miss the attention you gave them without missing the responsibility that comes with a healthy relationship. A person can miss your kindness without respecting your boundaries.